joining us. We are taking this as kind of a part two for a couple of reasons. We got um, some real professionals on this with us, and we got some really good feedback to the last call, the last webinar we did with Ruth. So this is what we named this one, From Trust to Tickets: Turn PM conversations into recurring commercial revenue. So today I'm joined by two professionals and experts in the field. And then you also got me, unfortunately, but the other two are going to make up for it. So Ruth, who joined us last webinar, or two webinars ago. Thanks, Ruth, for joining us here again. We're going to make this a regular occurrence with you. And we got Pat. Pat is a sales expert. You'll see him waving his arms around because he's trying to get AI to make his camera behave unsuccessfully. But let's get going so that you guys get the full benefit of an hour. So, what we're hoping you'll walk away with today is some practical ideas and solutions that are not just theoretical. And that's because all three of us have been in this industry for a long time and in different parts of the industry. We're going to talk. Ruth is coming from the perspective as of a real estate consultant, but she also owns real estate. She's managed large properties. She's bought large tracts with companies and for herself. And so she's going to talk about how commercial real estate people work, approve work, help you guys understand who's in control of the budget, who's signing the purchase orders, where the deals stall. And with that knowledge, what we hope is we're going to put you in a better position to help, right? We're in the service business, so we want to serve. And so how can we help you serve this segment of the industry? I'll talk a little bit about just the execution of service and some of the things that we did successfully. And we had a large service operation. That doesn't mean you have to have a large one to do these things. Most of what we did as a large service operation, we started doing when we were a very small service operation, one truck and two trucks, because they're the principles that work. And then Pat is going to take you through the sales and proposal side of the business. And Pat's been a sales coach for many years, and he's coached a lot of different sales systems. And so you get the benefit of these systems that he understands, and has taught, all wrapped into one. And so he's going to help you build that predictable pipeline of revenue and talk a little bit about maintenance agreements as well. So in part one, Ruth did an incredible job of just laying the foundation, and we didn't get enough from her. So we're going to get some more. So she'll go through her slides, and then I'm going to jump in after her just to talk about the service side, followed by Pat. But the idea is we're going to look at the operational and sales systems that work for recurring revenue in the roofing and service business in real estate. So it's basically three stages that we're going to be going through. And I think we covered them well enough. But so what I'm going to do is move on and introduce Ruth. Thanks so much again, Ruth, for joining us. And if you want to just shout, I can move the slides forward as you're ready. Thank you for being here.
Appreciate the warm welcome, Brian. Like I mentioned, my name's Ruth. I have been in the real estate, property management, asset management industry. It's my 13th or 14th year. So kind of started as part-time leasing agent, worked my way up to different C-suite positions, and then I now co-own a property management company, real estate investment firm. So today I'm going to go through a couple of items that I've discussed in other classes, but really focusing on, that sales process, why you're likely losing deals before you even step foot on site. And then I will transition over to Bryan and Patrick so that they can give their section as well too. So number one, roofers do not lose on price first. The number one reason commercial deals fall apart isn't your number, it's how you showed up before you even submitted it. So
Hey,
this is
Ruth,
something.
can I
Oh,
interrupt you for 1 second?
sure.
I just want to make sure everybody can see the shared screen okay. There's two tabs. One's a picture of you and one's the shared screen. I just want to make sure everybody can see the screen you're sharing. So if you can't, just look at the top of your Zoom screen and find the tab that says Bryan Mitchell's screen and you'll see everything. That's it.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, great. So let's talk about where deals actually die. So slow and unclear communication, bypassing the PM to get to ownership, pushing insurance before trust is built, proposing big scopes too early, and treating, every call like a sales call. I think the number one portion for this is treating every call like a sales call because I've talked about this in previous classes as well. But we're frequently calling you to be reactive, right? Something has happened. I need you out there right now. Can you help me provide a service? At that time, it's important that you're remembering we're calling you for a service. We're calling you to assist us because, something has gone south. And that is the biggest test, when you're trying to get the larger commercial jobs is we're looking at how are you helping me and serving me when I'm calling you in a time of need. And if I'm calling you in a time of need, especially something that may need to be responded to or addressed right away, like just tarping a roof, for an example, and on that phone call where I'm trying to just solve one problem, you are trying to pitch sales to me. It's likely that I will either tell you, hey, never mind, I actually found another contractor, or I'm not going to use you outside of just using the emergency tarp. And that is because you're not coming from a service-based mindset or a solution-based mindset. You're only thinking about, oh, wow, I got a call from a commercial property owner and they need me to help with this damage, but how else can I leverage this phone call? That is not how you need to show up for the first time. The first time, like I mentioned, is just providing a service, just helping us at our time of need. And then how you show up during that initial phone call will mean a lot in how we're going to take the phone call or the service moving forward. That leads again to proposing big scopes too early. It takes a lot of time and a lot of processes to go through how we're going to replace the roofing system, if we're going to replace the roofing system. And that often comes way later, especially if we're in the middle of the storm or of a storm, excuse me. I live in the Midwest, so we get storms all the time. Matter of fact, we're about to enter our busiest season. And there are a lot of companies that will literally come from out of state and start door knocking and start calling people. And it's too sales forward. Those opportunities will come to you later. But again, the first and most important item is to provide service right away. Pushing insurance before trust is built. That's another item as well. Contacting insurance, working with adjusters, all that, that is just such a tenuous process. That's something we don't look forward to. So if you are somebody that is not helping me in my time of need, instead of, just trying to get a big sale up front, how am I going to trust you to communicate with my insurance company? I don't want you to say or do anything that's too wrong or that might frustrate the insurance company, although you're supposed to be there and be our advocate, but the advocacy starts the second that you start building that relationship. What changes the outcome? Let's talk about how to resolve that and how to be better. Respond faster than anyone else. And that I shouldn't just say respond faster, provide service faster than anybody else because everybody's making a phone call, right? Everybody is calling us, especially after a large storm, because they want the business. But I'm looking for who is going to come out and help me in my time of need the fastest, right? And then we can start talking about, okay, what's the next process? Do we need to do an inspection? Do we need to just do some repairs? Lots of other things that go into that. Respect the approval structure. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. There are different approval structures and different people that you will need to speak to during this process. You can't just skip all the way up to the regional or to the property director of property management. It starts with the property manager. You need to build a good relationship with them first. Make the property manager look good internally. Again, that just comes back to communication and education. Deliver documentation without being asked. I know this is something that I get a lot of pushback on, especially with talking with contractors and other roofing companies, is they think, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this inspection, but then I don't get anything out of it. That's not always the case. We're always looking for documentation. If you're sending over a bid to me for Xactimate or whatever it is, you have to be able to justify that, right? We need photos. We need an inspection done. We need your honest feedback as to, how we're going to work together as a team to resolve this issue. And then earn the conversation, do not demand it. This is something that a lot of roofing companies and contractors have a lot of room to improve is nobody owes you time. Those property managers, just because you set foot on site or just because you call a regional doesn't mean that they owe you time right then and there. Our days are very busy, so it's important that you respect that. Talk a little bit about first party versus third party management. So third party management is hired by the owner, multiple internal approval layers. It's tiered, limited budget authority, and then complex but highly scalable once inside. I want to really focus on that the last portion though, highly scalable once inside. We all have at different property management companies or institutions, we do have our different contractors that we prefer working with, right? And the best thing that you can do when you're working with the third party management company is to make those property managers happy. We have very high turnover in this industry. People jump from region to region, property to property, or company to company very frequently. And if they're jumping from third party company to third party company, that is, if you're already in their good graces, you're opening yourself up to a lot of networking opportunities, a lot of opportunities to build relationships with different owners and different managers across the region or between the company. Next is first party. So this is going to be owner managed. It's going to be pretty rare that you're going to have interaction with a first party manager. Some things that you can look for are a few titles, which we'll talk about in another slide. It is harder to secure those initial meetings with them just because, again, we hire third party management companies as a layer of privacy protection because not everybody needs to know who owns A, B, and C asset. So there are different perks to working with first party and third party. First party, it is going to be easier for you to get a hold of the decision maker because everything is done internally. Third party, it's going to be a little bit harder for you to get a hold of the decision maker, but it starts on site. It starts on site with that PM because PMs stay an average of 1.5 years, if that, at each property. So if that person goes to a different property, you've built a good relationship with them, it's likely that they're going to take you to the next company with them. All right, the approval letter, what probably everybody wants to hear about. So we're going to start with the on-site property manager and then go from there. So on-site property manager, again, they're the one that's sitting in the office. They can usually approve small repairs, right? We're talking about $500 to $1,000. However, why I always say it is important that you build a good relationship with the on-site manager is the initial contact or call starts with the on-site manager. You are not going to get a director of operations, regional manager, or owner unless you're working with first party. They're not going to be the one that's calling you first, right? So the on-site property manager, when there is damage, when something has gone on, they are the ones making the initial phone calls, and then they are going to distribute the information to the director, to the regional, to the owner after that. So that's why I always say do not skip the property manager because they are the first one that you're going to have contact with and they're the first one making that call. Next is director of operations or facilities, approves mid-tier work. We're talking $1,000 to $5,000 of work. They may be calling you. It just depends because some of them oversee portfolios as well too. But that's when you start talking about, outside of an emergency tarp, doing some additional repairs on the property. That's when they approve that next step. Third is going to be a regional manager. They oversee multiple properties across sometimes multiple states or multiple regions. They're the ones that are going to start approving work where we're talking about deductibles, right? So anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. Well, maybe I should say deductibles a couple of years ago because deductibles have significantly increased in our industry as well. So they are the ones that are going to probably give you the green light to start work to be done. But again, it's rare that that's going to be your first point of contact. And then the owner asset manager. This is when we're starting to talk about insurance claims, when we're talking about for replacement of the roof. The owner, the asset manager, is going to have to approve that work. But again, I will repeat it until my face is blue. The on-site property manager is your first stop. If you skip or try to skip the on-site manager, or you disregard the on-site manager, you have already, the deal's dead on arrival. So just make sure that you're giving them that respect, because they are the main ones around as well too.
Hey, Ruth, I got another quick question for you.
Sure.
In some circumstances, we are reaching out to property managers to explain the value of a complimentary professional roof inspection and a roof
Mhm.
report.
Mhm.
And in that situation with your hierarchy, do we have to start with the lowest rung, or is it okay to insert yourself at the regional or the facilities director?
Yeah, sure. So you can contact the facilities director or the regional.
Okay,
It's better to coordinate with the on-site property manager though, because they are the ones that are on site every day, and they are going to be the ones that are coordinating the, time and date of the inspection. Again, and I also go back to capacity as well too. The on-site manager, that property is their only concern. They're not managing so many different properties across different portfolios. But when you start getting to the regional director of property management, I mean, some of them have 10, 20, even 30 properties that they're overseeing, and their
right,
days are extremely busy. They're traveling from here to there everywhere. So if you try to schedule something with them directly, they're going to have to end up going back to the property manager anyway to coordinate that.
gotcha. Thanks.
Yep, no problem. So talking about don't go around the PM, I've kind of gone over this already too. Provide that service, give them what they need. Frame your recommendations in their language. We are looking to you as the expert to provide us with additional information and knowledge, frankly, as far as our roofing system. Many property managers have no idea what type of shingle, what type of roof that they have. You'd be surprised if you call and you talk to them, and they really just have no clue. So it's important you have an opportunity when you're speaking with an on-site manager to educate them about their roofing system so that they are aware. When you're calling them, you guys can work as a team to make sure both sides understand what needs to happen next. If you don't respect the chain of command, again, that's going to be a number one thing that your deal is going to be dead on arrival. That property manager has to be the first fan of you. Then after that, they will start recommending you to the regional, to the director of property management. You need to care about the relationship that you're building with them. People often forget that the roofing system is usually the most expensive or second most expensive system on a property. So this is not a light decision. This is something that needs to be taken with care. This is something that needs to be taken with consideration. And after you show up that first time with a service-based heart posture, a lot of property managers like that. They really care about that. And so if you build that relationship with them first, they'll create a huge fan of you throughout the rest of the company. Okay, the first 24 to 48 hours, what PMs actually want. So, like I said, number one, respond fast. And responding fast is not a call back. Responding fast is not being the first phone call. Responding fast is they've called you with something that needs to be done and you're sending somebody out right away. This also comes down to if you are not capable, especially during storm season, if your team does not have the capacity to take on or go out and do an emergency tarp, don't take it on just because you want that sale. When we're talking about storm season, we're talking about water pouring into people's homes. I need somebody that's there and that's fast. So if you can't handle it, that also gives you an opportunity to look at the capacity of your team. Stabilize the situation. The most important. If I just need a tarp, please just put a tarp on so we can stop the bleeding, right? We can have conversations after that. But stabilizing the situation is the number one thing. Remember, we're getting calls from residents constantly. I have water coming in. I have this coming in. So the number one thing you can do to provide service is to stabilize the situation. Give clear next steps. All right, you've gone out, you've done the emergency tarp on the roof. Follow up. When are you going out to do an inspection? How soon are you going to get that documentation over to the property manager? That is important. Goes into number 4, document everything. Take pictures. Tell them exactly the locations of the roof that you put the tarp on. So that way they are aware, and then you all can work together on next steps for resolution. Stay professional, no upsell, no ego. Focus entirely on solving their immediate problem. I always say relationship-based business is the most profitable. If you are there for me when I'm calling you and when I need you, I am going to speak the world of you to so many different people. Budget season, quiet door opener. So budget season for property management is typically between July and August into September, October. So Couple things you can do. Offer a free or low cost inspection. It provides budget ready numbers for the property manager. When you're doing this, provide a good, better, and best option. If you only provide one type of bid, you're probably outpricing yourself already and you have no idea. So if you give them three different options, then they're going to be focusing more on that one because they're thinking, oh, this person really cares about my property and is giving me options instead of just forcing one bid on me. Next, present the forecast options. Again, they're short term and long term, right? So, talking about different types of assets, ask, do you have a class A, B, or C asset? How long do you plan to hold the property? That's going to help you quite a bit. And then show up as a planning partner, provide professional, credible data for their management presentations. Again, you are an educator in this opportunity, right? We're calling you because we're not the experts and we need an expert to help us through this process. So now that I've gone through a little bit of the, I'll call it courting process because it is mutual regarding property management companies and owners and roofing companies and contractors. Next, Bryan is going to step into the operational portion of it, how to execute the sale, how to execute the entire process so that you can set yourself up for success. So I will hand it off to Bryan.
Thanks, Ruth. We did have some questions that went out, and one of them was, where do you typically lose momentum with property managers? And so we gave a couple of options for the answer. And the one that came up the most was after they send the proposal, they don't get a decision or it goes cold. Have you got any advice on what they can do about that?
Yeah, so I'd say a couple things regarding that. So after they send the bid over and it gets cold, right? So most of the time when you're sending a follow-up, I've seen this as well too. The only follow-up that a lot of these companies are sending is, have you heard anything back? You're not asking about any information on the bid, right? Was there anything confusing? Am I close on pricing? Do I need to explain anything on the bid? You're not asking for feedback when you follow up. So if you're just calling these property managers and saying, hey, have you heard anything? You're not really going to get much of a response from them, right? Because again, to that, it makes it seem very salesy, right? When can I get this approved? When can we get started on this? Instead of asking for feedback. And that's why I mentioned that good, better, best option. Because if you're just providing one bid, your bid may be apples and the other ones are oranges and bananas. But if you give three different options upon the initial contact, then you have a better opportunity of being selected.
That's awesome. And you answered actually both questions. The
Oh, good.
two places where people are getting stuck. The other one was during the approval process, and you just handled that exactly as well. Thank you
Oh,
so
great.
much.
Of course.
All right, cool. So we'll get into a bit of the service side. Um, and there are a couple of like harsh facts, and one of them is not every building is getting re-roofed next week. In fact, less than 10% most likely are going to get re-roofed. So um, if you're just chasing re-roofs, it's hard. You basically looking for a needle in a haystack, and then you've got to compete against your competitors to see if you're going to win the job. So the ideal way is to expand into the service and maintenance because even a brand new roof should be being maintained if and especially a brand new roof because there should be an NDL on it. A lot of roofers will replace a roof and walk away from it. So if you replace the roof, first of all, don't make that mistake. Make sure, and we always did this at the closing meeting when we were delivering the final documents to the building owner or whoever was in charge. We would talk about the ongoing maintenance that we're going to provide and how we are going to do it and when we are going to do it and what we were going to do, because we wanted these um, building owners and managers to know that it's a valuable service. So when we actually did it, we also made sure they knew about it. So what we typically gave was first of all, we used to do a 5-year labor and warranty or labor and the materials generally covered by the manufacturer, but we brought that down to 2 years. And so what we educated our clients on was that we, for the next 2 years, are going to really take care of this roof. And beyond that, you're going to pay for ongoing maintenance. And we told them what that was going to cost right up front. it becomes a very valuable thing, especially if you are going to extend the life of that roof. And that really applies whether somebody's holding onto it or selling it. The one place you don't want to be is you selling your building and they come and do an inspection and they got all kinds of problems with the roof, and there goes your sales price, down in layers. So that ongoing maintenance is a great service, and I call it ongoing because the truth is you do need it to be ongoing. It's kind of like ongoing of brushing your teeth. It's things are happening up there that damage the roof. So let's be up there on a regular basis. And I've told this story before. I had a client in the Florida market that had me on their roof every month. Now, that cost them a reasonable amount of money, but they could not afford a leak. They were building fancy electronic equipment for NASA. If they had a leak, they would basically have to shut down. I mean, they couldn't even have water on the floor. It was difficult to get into that building. So, depending on what their tolerance for leaks is, you can be more aggressive in how often you're out there to make sure you're preventing them. The why service wins is a couple of points we got on this here. Obviously, we get a higher closing ratio with service than we do with replacement work. As a large re-roofing company with a great reputation, we were very happy to get about 30% of our re-roof bids. That was a strong number. When you first get into this business, you don't have that kind of credibility. And so the service side of the business is going to build your credibility for the replacement work. If you position yourself correctly, and Ruth just spoke about this education part of it, people don't get educated in roofing except usually when they go work for a roofing company, or they have a real major disaster as a building owner. So if you open and educate, you're going to get people pay more attention to you, right? So, and you educate honestly because we really want them to see the value of what we do. We actually, because this, it's funny. Ruth mentioned how property managers generally don't know a lot about the roof. Now, you do run into people who are very knowledgeable, right? But very often they don't know a lot about the roof. Well, what's amazing to me is roofing companies, people who work in roofing companies very often don't know a lot about roofing. And so that it was a shocker. Now, we had about 300 employees, so there was a lot of people who had to know about roofing, but the office staff, about 80, I would say half of them didn't know anything about roofing. And so we actually created a course just on how, what's commercial roofing all about. But so you need to educate yourself, your salespeople. Very often in the roofing business, we bring in salespeople with a sales background. That's really the ideal person to have for service in particular. So you got to educate them really well on the roofing industry while they're with you, and they have to educate themselves. But you're going to be providing what they need to use to be educated. And of course, if you get a roof under an ongoing maintenance agreement, and we had over 3,000 of them by the time I left. I was looking in the early 20s, in the teens, we were at about 1,500. Once you've got it rolling, it's going to compound. But if you are in that position, those re-roofs, you could be just in a place where you're getting last look at the pricing. The other thing is, on a restoration, you may get that without even a bid going to anybody else because you're the trusted partner. Why? And if you've proven yourself as the trusted partner and you haven't fleeced the relationship, you got a very good chance of just being taken at your word for the the restoration. And you are also going to be the one who knows that that roof is ready for a restoration. Whereas before we were walking around looking for these opportunities, actually now you're the one who's going to know. You and your building owner partner will have been discussing this and saying, hey, this roof's got 6 years left. We're going to try and push it to 8 years. But when that time comes, you're the one who's going to know. So you just put yourself in a great position for that.
I did
Um,
want to add a point there, Brian. You made a
Please,
really good point before, and I see this a lot too, which is why some deals are dead on arrival. I know that there are, project managers, and then there's business development people, right? I've seen that those two positions are frequently separately hired, or they're two different positions in the industry. Now, if you're sending a business development person who knows absolutely nothing about roofs, I mean, then what's the point, right? You have to know about the product that you are selling. It is too frequent. I've been to too many golf tournaments. I've been to too many conferences. I've been to too many events in general where roofing companies or contractors will send, let's be frank, their best looking women to the conference to gain the attention of the men, right? But at that point, none of the business development people really know about the company outside of the name. And then they want to pass you on to a project manager right after, right? To remember your business development people are your first point of contact. They don't need to know every little bit of detail about every single type of roof, but they do need to know enough to be useful and to be knowledgeable. So that you made a really great point. Because again, first point of contact, when you're mixing a property manager who's looking for education and a business development person who cannot provide even that simple education, the deal's dead.
thanks, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. And, one of the things that you can do to help that is if you're going to send a young, attractive person, go with them. And so now they might want to come and talk to the young, attractive person, but you can back them up with the knowledge, right? So there's still hope for us ugly guys. We, we, we can still go to the golf tournaments, but with the backup. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Um, so let's just talk about this, what we've called the 40-hour trust stack. Um, we want to become the automatic first call. Now, I felt one of the most effective ways of doing this was, as Ruth was saying earlier, she's calling me with a problem, right? So, and we need to go there to fix the problem. We're not going there to have coffee. So, what I would do is I would go with the text when they went to go repair that problem. Guess what? The property manager suddenly has time for you because your guys are going up on the roof and you're with them. So you're not only building credibility because your guys are there, but you're getting first, face to face time because you're with them. So why not follow those guys? Sort of like ambulance chasing, right? We're going, we're going, but we're going with the guys so that we can build a relationship and take advantage of the fact that we responded so quickly. The communication of next steps is very often a little different for each building owner or manager, right? So if you put yourself in a position where you're the educator, and so one of the things that we used to do was sort of lunch on learns. We actually were authorized to teach ongoing education classes for property managers. And in our area, property managers needed ongoing education. It's not the case everywhere. But when you put yourself in that position, you get to share your knowledge about roofing, but then you have breaks and you get opportunities to speak to these people and find out exactly what's their position with the asset that they're protecting. And so when you go and visit them, you a lot more knowledgeable, right? And when you do make friends in this business, Ruth brought something up that I think is so important is that there's a high turnover. Very often that turnover is within the industry. So when you make a friend and whether they move on or somebody else moves on, you've got really two opportunities, right? Who's the new person here and where did that person go? And how can you find out from the one what are the main interests of the other? So we call it referrals, right? But now we're talking about referrals with some intention. You're actually looking for some interesting information. And I brought this up the other day when we were chatting about this. Um, I happened to find somebody who took on a property manager role with a new company, and one of my clients who was a property manager knew them. And so I found out what they liked to drink. And it was interesting because they had very specific drink they liked that was some kind of beer that was brewed in North Carolina. But when I went to visit, I had that beer and as a gift. Now you can't usually, you can't always take alcohol, so maybe look for something else. But as a foreigner, I used to get away with a lot if you got an accent. So I didn't know about that. But I brought a 6 pack of that particular beer. I actually brought them a T-shirt as well, and that was just a great in because this person could see that I was interested in them. I found out what I could about them, and then I came prepared to educate them on roofing. So we already spoke about documenting, and we've got so many incredible tools now for documentation. Just recently we were on a webinar with Roofer, who has some fantastic tools. We used to have to go up and draw the roof to get a nice takeoff. Those days are over. But with that information, take advantage of it. Most of the people you're going to deal with don't get on the roof themselves. So they'll be quite intrigued to know what you know about the roof just from the picture. How cut up is this roof? Why are those pop-ups there? What kind of metal is on the copings? Just educate them. Of course, we have to do this, stabilize the issue. We got to stop the problem, right? So that's why you go there with the techs. You don't have to be in the same truck. You can leave before the text, but you there with them. So you're quick and you're accompanying the guys who are going to get the work done.
Another point to
So,
add to that, Brian, before you move on, when you educate property owners and property managers about their roof and about their system, then they're going to keep an eye out, right? They're going to call you more often. They may see, okay, oh, something's off here. I had some gutters fall off on this side, or these shingles are falling off, or whatever the case is. When you provide them with that education, they are going to be more cognizant and have better visuals on the property, meaning that they are going to call you more. So do not be afraid, and not even just afraid, but be opportunistic there and educate them. If they know more about their roofing system, and they're going to point out more things that may come wrong, and then again, just continuing to build that relationship, you want to be the speed dial person for them, and that comes through education.
yeah, I absolutely love that. And in fact, one of these slides, we spoke about how quickly you respond. As far as I'm concerned, you should respond immediately. If Ruth was calling me, I would be taking her call. Even if I'm on a Zoom, I will pause, take her call, say, "Hey, I'm on a Zoom. I'll call you right back." But I want to be taking her call. And it's also useful to know a lot of other good people in the other industries. So if they have something that needs to be done that you don't handle, you don't have to make money on that. You just do a referral. And a good referral is going to go a long way for them as well.
And even on the opposite end of that too, when you're working with these different trades, like for example, if you have a flat roof, a lot of flat roofs, the AC systems will also be on top of the roof. So if you're replacing the roof, then you're going to have to replace the AC system, right? Then if you're building a relationship with that HVAC technician, they're up there servicing the HVAC system and they see some things wrong with the roof, they're going to call you, let the property manager know, but also call you. So again, there's so much opportunity, for mutual connection and education there.
Yeah, it's the gift that just keeps on giving. I don't. We've got a young guy working with us at the moment. He's out of Houston. He set up this relationship with the HVAC company. It looks like they might buy his roofing company. I mean, they just are working so closely together. And they're a huge AC company, but they're just giving him so much work. Thanks, Ruth. So yeah, I'm going to just briefly talk about this. I think we've covered the fact that we got to get there fast and we got to be doing the work, right? We got to stop the bleeding. Um, but if you have the time, go and inspect the rest of the roof. this is knowledge that's going to be really useful to the building owner. So inspect the rest of the roof. And as you develop your relationship with that client, you can start talking about the essential side of ongoing maintenance. And Pat will share this with you in a couple of minutes. One of the things about ongoing maintenance that the NRCA points out is that it could add like 30 years to the life of the roof. It's crazy. I mean, it's they were very aggressive in their statistic, but this is a well-recognized organization, so we'll take their word for it. So I could have a quick look at the questionnaire here. Let's just see. So we put a poll question up. When you handle a leak or a service call, what percent turn into additional revenue? And so over 60% is that's a fact. 10 to 30% occasionally, and 30 to 60% we converted to some bigger work. So just if you take those percentages, the good news is your efforts are not wasted. Right, this is going to bring you more business. And at the end of the day, a service business is a very honest business. You got to serve. If you're not serving, don't call it service. Call it, fleecing. We're talking about the service business. So you really want to go to the next level when it comes to serving. Ross is on this call with us here, and what Ross does this all the time. He teaches roofing companies how other companies serve people because for some reason in our roofing education we skipped that bit, right? And mostly because we learned our roofing education from some other roofer. So there's a huge amount of information you can take from other service companies that you can apply. So if you do get to the point where you're getting a maintenance agreement and you've got some buy-in on that, and believe me, I've done this the hard way. We started with maintenance agreement number 1, and I didn't think we were ever getting to number 1. And then I didn't think we were ever getting to number 2. It takes persistence because people aren't used to that. And, it's kind of like when you go buy something at Best Buy and they say, do you want the 15-year guarantee for, 3 times the price of what you just bought or whatever? You say no. That's kind of what roofing is like. But if you keep it simple, and you also explain how you determine the price. I don't know if we'll have time today, but we basically have 6 factors that you've got to consider and explain to the building owner why it's going to cost this amount to maintain the roof. And then include everything. Don't start giving them 15 different, ads. Just include everything. Keep it simple. Explain very clearly when you're going to be there, and then announce it before you get there and announce it after you get there, and keep it as a top of mind thing. Wow, we have just done this for your roof and it is looking great. Or we found something and we're going to keep an eye on it for you. So we want to be communicating that. And then on the other side of this coin, if you've got a roof that you've decided it's time to replace it, don't put it under a maintenance agreement. Don't fix it and give a warranty. Just tell them that if you want, you can do some emergency repairs, but the honest truth is your roof has to be replaced. So just maintain roofs that you can maintain. So the best way to handle this is to grade them. And if you don't already have a grading system, I've seen our grading system all over the country. So just contact us if you'd like to see it, and then you can edit it yourself. And hopefully, maybe Pat will actually show it to you. But basically, what we're trying to make our clients understand is their roof does degrade over time. Frankly, even if you're maintaining it, it's still going to degrade over time. It's just going to degrade slower. And slower can mean a lot of value, right? So go through it, explain why this is a or a B roof, or why this is a D roof. And if it's a or B or a C roof, explain to them that down the road, there's going to be an opportunity to do a restoration that would avoid an early replacement. The stats are about 80% of roofs get replaced prematurely. That's a huge opportunity for you. We bringing value to the industry. All right. So you've heard enough from me. We just had that one poll question, and so I'm pleased to hand it over to Pat. Pat, do you want me to keep driving here for
Yeah,
you?
if you don't mind, I don't think I can.
Okay.
But
No, that's good.
I apologize to everybody if you see just the top of my head, can't see my wig. I'm having AI-based camera issues, so I apologize. But yeah, Bryan, if you could just click along, that'd be great.
All right.
So I've got about 14 minutes to talk about sales. And first up, when we deliver a proposal, so we've met with the client, had a great discovery call, inspected the roof, got an estimate. It's time to deliver our proposal. All right. What is included in that proposal, and I've got some examples, can be a game changer, and it can be also, depending on who's reading it, a regional who's never met you before, or somebody else on the decision-making chain. It might be your last or your only opportunity to make a really good professional first impression. So what I would recommend is take a screenshot of this and then, have a template set up so that everybody in your company knows exactly how our proposals go out, what's included in them. And I've got some examples. So very simple, plain language, fifth grade level, layman's terms, whatever you want to call it, summary, right? That a typical property manager could understand. Could you back up one slide there? I can't remember. 2 photos with contexts, and then I'll jump into the samples. Obviously, listing, pricing, conditions. Come prepared with options and warranty notes. You may not need to use them every time, but boy, you look squared away if it comes up and you just reach into your folder and you pulled out the appropriate information. And then lastly, I'm a big believer in eliminating the follow-up game. So anybody who's a true sales professional knows how many hours a week we waste, we call chasing ghosts, right? Phone calls that don't get returned, texts that don't get answered, voicemails that you never hear from, emails that are never acknowledged. So I'm a big believer in that. Before you leave one meeting, make sure you've got the next meetings set. In other words, if we're not going to get a signature on this, make sure we have clearly understood, mutually beneficial, clearly defined next steps, and they're on calendars. So we can say, can't sign it today, but here's the clear next steps to get this thing moving forward. And here's when it's going to happen. Ideally, obviously, we would negotiate with Ruth. So a couple of examples, I've got 4 or 5 slides here of just a regular old proposal for a scope of work. And the first one is a cover sheet. Obviously, putting a picture of their own building accomplishes a lot, but it also, again, ups our level of professionalism, and it's clear we're not just using some old Word template. And if you create your template in Word, great, just copy and paste. Bryan mentioned the grading system. I don't have it, Bryan. At the end of this presentation, there's a QR code with my calendar link. If anybody would like that grading system, just hit me up on that QR code. We'll talk for 2 minutes on the phone and I'll get it over to you. But take the time to explain to them where their roof is in its life cycle. Is it an A? Is it a B? Is it a C? So that the property manager and everybody on the way up understands, okay, we've got 2 years left on this roof. We could have 10 if we did a coating or whatnot. This page here, another part of the example, you can see there's 2 parts there, recommended and then urgent. So if you can take your proposal and instead of lumping it all into one $30,000 proposal, if it makes sense, you could identify the urgent issues that need immediate attention, and then we could talk about planning for the recommended ones. And so if you can break those up on your proposals, the better off you'll be. And then I'll say lastly here, with the understanding that these proposals can have any amount of detail. I've seen proposals from 1-page summary to 85 pages of details with, every screw and fastener that we're going to use. And that really depends upon what your prospective client wants. If you're talking to an engineering type, they're probably going to want some more details. If you're talking to a really busy property manager, or a regional, maybe they just want you to net it out. But in every proposal, we want to make sure that we are covering the terms and conditions, the warranties, the exclusions, in other words, things that are not covered under a warranty. All right. So all very, very important parts of a winning proposal. And if you're not doing those things, you definitely need to up your game. All right. You elevate yourself above your competition, without doubt. So the good, better, best option, I often hear competing opinions on good, better, best. And then Ruth, I'm going to circle back and ask you. My personal opinion, I know that any proposal I deliver, it's got to be needs appropriate and budget appropriate. And one of the hardest things that a sales rep struggles with getting comfortable is having the money conversation. So I typically, instead of a good, better, best, I want to understand what the customer's real needs are and explain to them their options. So, for example, instead of a good, I could say, you know what, we can put a 6-month Band-Aid on this, no warranty, cheap and dirty, and we can figure out the rest of the plan. Or if you're looking for a 5-year system, all right, and I know based upon square footages, it's going to cost you probably around, maybe I'll make up a number, maybe 15 grand. Or we can look at, 25 or 30-year replacement, in which case you're looking at $500,000. And then ask them, which is more appropriate for what they're looking for in their property. And I want to go through that to educate them through their options. Yes, it's good, better, best. But what I want to get to is the money part. So if we settle on restoration, I've already said it's probably going to come in around 15 grand. Does that fit within your budget requirements? All right. Now, Ruth, do you prefer a good, better, best, or do you prefer talking about the different short-term, intermediate, and long-term options? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so it really depends on the property. And that's why, at the bottom where it says, how long do you plan to hold the asset? That is probably, like you said, probably the single most important question that you can ask when you're bidding out, especially when we're doing insurance claims. Sometimes we'll do a roofing insurance claim, or that the roof system is the most negotiated portion of real estate transactions. And so it's deciding, okay, do we just need to do enough to get this property closed? Do we need to do enough, or is the buyer requiring that we replace the entire system? And sometimes that cash discussion is a negotiation upon closing. So if you're providing, I think there's the two options for good, better, best. Good, better, best can be for maintenance, and then good, better, best can be for full replacement, right? Talking about the different types of roof, the different shingles that you can offer if you're going to do something like a coating on top as well too. So knowing the answer of how long do you plan to hold this asset, or when was the roof last replaced, or when was last storm, asking those questions will give you a better gauge. When you're talking about, your newer Class A properties, it's actually opposite of what people may think. So when you're talking about a Class A new build, they just spent money on replacing the entire roof system. That doesn't mean a storm's not going to come by. They often have less money set aside for replacing a roof system because they just did it a few years ago. Now, when you're talking about older properties, or, Class B minus or Class C, they have money usually set aside that we've budgeted for over X amount of years to replace that roofing system. Now, I don't want anybody on this call to take that and run with it, right? It's still important to ask those questions. It's going to be tougher for you to get, a best approval on a new construction because they don't really set money aside for that until after year 10. But when you're talking about a Class B or C asset that's been existing 20, 40, 60 years, then they usually have money set aside for that. But always give the options of good, better, best at maintenance, and then good, better, best replacement as well.
Awesome.
Awesome. And
Yes,
Pat,
and yeah,
I know we've got some people with questions, but what we're going to do is let you get through your talk, and then we'll handle questions at the end.
okay.
Hopefully that suits everybody.
All right, I'll speed it up. Yeah, and to the previous slide, I mean, you are going to win and lose deals on what we call the discovery phase. And if you were to go through formal sales training, that might mean a little bit more to you. But the questions that Ruth asks, how old's the building? When's the last time the roof was replaced? Have you been having issues? How long has the issues been going on? What have you tried in the past to solve it? It typically takes me about 20-25 minutes to get through a really good discovery session, so that I have a really good understanding so I can act in the best behalf of my client, because that's what I want to do. And if I don't have a really good understanding, I can't do that. So taking Bryan's prompting, win small and then earn the bigger jobs. All right. And there's a reason that our tagline is, lead with service, because the guy who's going to get the $1 million re-roof job is probably the guy who's been keeping the roof alive for the last 2 years. All right. And if they're paying me, hopefully forever, to maintain their roof, whether their re-roof job is 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years from now, if they're paying me at 65-70% margins all day, every day to maintain their roofs, what do I care when it gets replaced? And then after we replace it, their warranty requires it to be on a maintenance plan as well. So I'm going to get these small jobs so that I can get the client and then start turning an apple into an apple tree into an apple orchard. All right. And I'm going to hit on that later on. So follow-up status updates. Maybe Ruth can comment on this, but it sounds like no pressure. All right. Touch point one, obviously, we want to present our proposal at every opportunity. And if you can't present it in person, do it by a Zoom call. The surest thing you can do to assure you don't get a job is to email them the estimate. All right. For a lot of reasons, we lose control of the sales cycle. It's not possible to ask them for their business if we've emailed them a template, and whatever the next step is, when it's going to happen, we're out of the loop. And so, if she were to tell me I need to check with my regional, great. How often do you meet with your regional? And before I get to that, I always want to, if I can't meet with the decision maker, I want at least to present to the decision maker if I can, even if it's on a Zoom call, because their pain points are probably going to be different than the property manager's pain points. And that decision maker, if they've never met me, they're making their decision based upon 3 piles of white paper with black ink on them and a number at the bottom. So they never met us. They don't know anything about our company. They don't know much about us at all, except a number on a sheet of paper. And that's not ideal. So if she meets with her regional every week, I'd say, great, meet on Wednesdays. How about we touch base about moving this forward on Thursday? Does that work for you? Probably going to say, sure. If not, ask her for a better
Am
day.
I the only one who lost Pat, or did we lose Pat?
Oh, no. Am I still here?
No, I still hear
Yep,
him.
I can still hear you. You're
Okay,
good.
good.
All right, cool. All right, next slide. You can skip to Bryan if you can hear me. So anytime our sales teams are underperforming, it's usually an accountability issue. But there's a trick question there. Accountable to what? All right. So when I'm managing salespeople, I absolutely have what we call KPIs, or revenue producing activities. What are they doing today to get on a roof tomorrow, to get on a roof Monday? All right. And tracking and measuring not only what type of service activities are going on, but also where every single deal stands in my pipeline. I want to know that there is a clearly defined next step with a task and a date and a time, and it's on somebody's schedules, and that way I don't have to follow up. I had 2 of those myself today. Haven't spoken to the guys in a week. We set up meetings to speak today. I didn't have to do any follow-up. It was on their calendar. They were expecting my call. Life was great, and probably saved 6 hours, from chasing them down. But tracking how many leads come in, how many of them turn into proposals, how many of them proposals actually get closed, our average ticket per job size, how many days of backlog, and how many days does it take from an initial call until we deliver a proposal. Obviously, quicker is better, and conversion rates. So if you're not tracking these things, I would say today is a great time to start tracking them. From a salesperson, I want to shift gears in my last couple seconds to talk about maintenance agreements. So this little graphic here, just to summarize it, on the right hand, you'll see the service department. All right. And service will keep our pipeline filled. All right. Instead of these ups and downs and bidding on jobs I'm only going to get a third of at low margins, by focusing on service, like I said, if I can get my foot in the door, a shorter selling cycle, keep the work coming in for years, hopefully these clients I'm going to become their trusted advisor for a decade or more. And that constant influx will keep me making good commissions, keep me making good money, keep my pipeline flowing, keep me building relationships. And then when the time for a re-roof arises, I'm going to get the first bite at the apple. Versus, as Bryan mentioned, trying to identify the 4% of the roofs that need to get replaced, and then literally getting into, a bidding war with your competitors, trying to, who can come in at the cheapest price. So there's a lot of very good reasons for leading with service. Next page, Bryan. And then in terms of what's in it for us, all right, a maintenance agreement is really good for a roofing contractor. All right, consistent recurring revenue, predictable cash flow. I think Bryan mentioned, when he left his company, 1,500 maintenance agreements, average value of $2,000 a piece. So January 1st of every year, he started off with $3 million in auto renewing, very predictable cash that didn't have to be sold again. Just a renewing maintenance agreement. All right. So we get all the benefits of that recurring revenue, which is really the holy grail. We are completely blocking out our competition from accessing this building by putting it under contract. All right. Obviously, it's going to help build long-term relationships. And then for the client, all right, certainly reduced stress, worry about, when do leaks happen? They never happen in the middle of the day on Monday, right? They happen Saturday afternoon. So either eliminating or delaying potential leaks, very predictable maintenance costs because we're telling them what their annual fee is going to be. They're getting twice a year inspections and reporting, keeping warranty compliance. And ultimately, we want that roof to last as long as possible. And Bryan, you hit the next slide. And the ideal way to do that is to walk them through the math. So for maintenance agreements, the ideal prospect might not be who you might not be the normal person you're looking to sell a scope of work. All right. Certainly, if you can get involved with a property manager who's got a portfolio, in that case, one yes could turn into 10 more buildings under maintenance agreement. So looking for property managers that actually have a portfolio, much more of an ideal candidate. We want to shift our mind shift to future focused roof replacement. We'll get to it. You're going to pay me in the interim. I'm not going to tell you that. All right. But we'll get to it when it's in your best interest, not in my best interest to make a sale and get a commission like Ruth mentioned. All right. High stakes facilities, cold storage units in general, retail outlets, places that having a catastrophic leak or even a moderate leak will interrupt their cash flow. Those types of facilities need to be on maintenance agreements, so they're not jeopardizing loss of revenue because they're down literally for one day because of a leak. And then aging roofs, all right, past 10 years old, but they're not dead yet, we can really become superstars. All right, so we're looking for a little bit of a different person. And when we're talking about maintenance agreements, I always recommend that you have some type of professional marketing asset, because you're going to leave them some information, which is this. All right, this is how our maintenance program, and you're going to leave them a sign-off sheet with a quote. However, the property manager, and Ruth, maybe you can answer this, may not always be the right person to be able to make a decision about purchasing an ongoing maintenance agreement. All right. They might be in purely reactive mode. They might not have the authority. It might have to go into an operating budget instead of a CapEx budget. Who knows? Oftentimes, you're presenting to somebody who just has no ability to commit their organization into an ongoing maintenance. So we might have to work with them a little bit more, and just ask them who would be the more appropriate person to speak to. Ruth, from your experiences, does a property manager typically have the ability to engage?
We do. It depends.
Yeah.
So if it's something to where, and again, you made a really good point about revenue interruption, right? If there's a leak, even at a multifamily building or a commercial building, office, mixed use, whatever the case is, each day that is considered something that's an intrusion that somebody they then don't have to pay rent for, right? Because at that point, then you're interrupting my cash flow. Now we're
Yeah.
talking about maintenance and things like that. It depends on how you present it, right? It's presenting it by saying we can have a maintenance, a routine maintenance, somebody is looking over this roof at all times. That way you have less of a risk exposing yourself to business interruption. That's the sales pitch, right? That's the way to explain it, that it's providing value. The best person to speak with those about is going to be a maintenance coordinator or a facilities coordinator or supervisor, because they are actually the ones that are primarily in charge of setting those maintenance budgets. They're the ones that are providing the numbers and the details to the regional property manager, to the director, even to the owner of the asset. So speaking with maintenance teams regarding that, because then that also takes something off of their plate, right? Maintenance guys are usually the ones that are supposed to be monitoring any of the roofing systems, but they don't know anything about roofing systems. They monitor cosmetic, right? They don't really know anything deeper outside of cosmetic. So
Yep.
another education opportunity, teach them about things to look for, present the opportunity of a maintenance program, because that takes something off of their back that they are told to monitor with each of
Right.
their properties, but they don't know anything, right? So if you're providing that mutual value to them of, hey, let's get you on a maintenance program just to ensure that you don't have any business interruption with leaks and we don't have to be reactive, that is providing value to both them as the customer and to you as the company owner or as the project coordinator or
Sure.
manager, because you can get revenue, excuse me, from that as well. We've also talked about do not exceeds, DNEs. So that could be something that you can also use. That way they know how to adequately budget that for the year.
Sure. And in addition to getting another 10, 15 years out of the life
Right.
of the group.
Yep.
So, okay, next slide, Brian. So everybody in our programs has got a copy of this. If you'd like a copy, again, just hit me up. But this is actually a document put out by the National NRCA, the National Roofing Contractors Association. And it's tough to read, but it's a document Brian was referring to that you can actually leave with your client as part of their maintenance agreement package. And it says right on it that a new roof that's not maintained has got a lifespan of 10 to 14 years, right in black and white. One that's managed, 14 to 20 years, and one that's on a maintenance plan, 20 to 30 years. So the same roof, we could literally take it from a 10 or 15 years to 25 or 35 years. All right. Simply by having it as what we call managed roof. All right. We're checking out twice a year. We're taking care of the little things that turn into big things, extending the life of their roof, etc. So if you'd like a copy of that, just let me know. We hit the next slide, Brian. I'll keep us moving. Learning to speak the language of the person who can make a decision. And I almost think sometimes when you're talking about maintenance agreements, you're better off speaking to the owner and their accountant than the property management, because we are now talking about asset management, return on investment, risk management, all of these different, what we call C-suite pains. All right. and understanding what do they mean by CapEx or capital expenses versus OpEx or operational expenses, and how is this project going to get paid? All right. And understanding that we have to shift our focus to selling the roof life extension. We're not selling a product, we're selling longevity, quality of life, peace of mind, and certainly the financial upsides. All right, Bryan, you can go on.
We want to speak to Ruth. That's who we want to speak to.
There we go. All right. Some other additional what I call marketing assets that you can bring along. Again, it's not a service advantage or an ABC roofing material. You know, it's printed by a third party, and it puts black and white right in here the lifespan and how much it's going to cost, the cost of doing nothing versus the cost of being proactive, and what it means to you financially if you do nothing and you have failure in 2 years versus spending $5,000 and getting another 5 or 7 years out of it. So, you know, come prepared and make sure you're comfortable speaking the language of the people who are going to make this decision. And then I think my last slide, Bryan, is me. And this is just another tool a lot of our clients use, where this is a screenshot, so I can't show it to you live, but basically enter in, there's a couple different versions, a new roof comparison, life cycle analysis, existing roof analysis, to be able to sit down with that property manager and say, look, there's 2 years life left. All right. And if we get it into a maintainable condition and then put an $1,800 maintenance agreement on it, we're going to be able to add another 8 years to the life of your roof. And if that roof costs $750,000, okay, not only are we going to get you 10 years of life, we're going to keep $750,000 in your pocket or your bank account, collecting interest or keeping you from getting a loan. And our average cost for maintaining that roof is going to be $2,250 instead of $37,500. And one of the things I like about this is if you can give it to them in a format where they can play around with it, when they're pushing buttons, they're making decisions. They're seeing which scenario makes the most sense. All right. So know who you're talking to, be able to speak their language, have the marketing assets for maintenance agreements, and then get comfortable with some type of quantitative analysis to show them the hard but real numbers, you know, that they're going to experience by doing nothing versus getting it up to speed and putting on a maintenance agreement. And I rushed through it. I survived.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Pat. And thank you, Ruth. Your input has been terrific. Pat, just excellent training. And we apologize for going a little bit over. I know some of you had questions. If you want to stick around and ask them, please go ahead. Otherwise, just give us a shout and we can spend some time with you answering your questions,
Sure.
you know, when it suits you.
Yeah,
I
Bryan,
see,
we actually had some
Mike
people
had a question.
send,
Yep.
yeah, we had some people send some questions in. So I'll start with the one in the chat and then I can go through the questions. People can stick around if they have the time. So first question, do you believe that there is an advantage to being a larger commercial roofing company with a big footprint and several branches? And how much should we showcase that in our presentation?
Okay. And I think really great question. And I'm anxious to hear Ruth's response as well, because it's probably contrary to mine. But I think being a smaller company can actually work to your advantage. You know, the bigger companies, every project you get assigned a new property manager or project manager for the roofing project. You're always getting assigned, you know, a new point of contact. You are not utmost high on their priority list. You're probably not going to get the same level of service. And I think a lot of property managers are looking for that type of service. The bigger companies, you know, you get lost in them. And they've got their way of doing things. They don't tend to communicate well. And it can actually work against them because not the bigger the company, the more people we've got to have follow process. So I think it can actually be an advantage to being a smaller company that doesn't have all those ancillary issues to go along with it. Ruth, what's your preference? A bigger company that's got some social proof and more reliable?
Yeah, I
Um,
think it depends, to be honest with you. Like larger companies tend to have more capacity, right? So they are able to respond faster. They're able to go out and do maintenance work faster. A lot of them often have a maintenance division. I think it comes down to one, capacity, and then two, communication, right? Everybody wants to feel like you're their only client. So you can do that or fail at that as a larger company or as a smaller company. So it really comes down to response time and your interaction with them as well, too. Now, it depends as well with the size of the management company too, right? So if you're talking about large institutional management companies like Greystar, like RPM Living, because of their widespread, it's likely the bigger companies have more branches in different areas or different regions that can help them, and they build those relationships more because they are servicing in so many different areas. But again, it comes down to the communication. You want to make them feel like you're their only client, and then also capacity regarding any maintenance repairs, excuse me, or the capacity of your team to respond to emergencies.
Yeah.
so I guess the answer is it depends.
It depends,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I think one of the key things you said there, Ruth, is that they think you're their only client. That's the way you're treating them,
Right.
whether you're big or small. Now, one of the things I love about a big company, and I experienced this, is you got a lot of trucks. And if you're doing your branding properly, you're getting a lot of attention because of it.
Yeah. And then, Bryan, are these what's on the screen? Are these meant if they want a copy of any of these, just reach out and we'll get them to them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
if you'd like, you can just take a photo of this QR code. Like I said, just book a quick call with me. It doesn't have to take very long, and be happy to chat with you, and I'll get into your hands whatever these assets you'd like. So, back to you, Bryan.
Nick, do you have any other ones, any questions for us?
Yes, sir. So again, just a reminder, if anyone does want to spend any one-on-one time with either Brian, Pat, or Ruth, book in the Calendly link and feel free to email them. Here's the next question. I think this is mostly for Ruth. How do I know if the PM I'm talking to can actually approve work or if I'm still too low in the chain?
It comes down to dollar amount. Honestly, usually if it's going to be like a repair or something smaller under $1,000, then they don't need to go to anybody higher up to get that approval. But once you start exceeding $1,000, that is when they will need to get higher approval. Sometimes that higher approval though is just like through a system, right? So they just need to send a request through the internal company system to have their regional or whomever approve it. So it
I
just
see.
it comes down to dollar amount.
Cool. And then top trust killers you see roofers do in the first conversation with a PM.
They said the top trust killers.
Yeah.
They didn't bring
Um,
the chocolates.
coming empty-handed. No, I'm kidding. I'd say the
They brought a
top
veggie
trust.
platter.
Yeah, I'd say the top trust breaker, honestly, is talking to them like they're dumb or they're stupid.
Mm.
It
Yep.
just it disrespects their authority as the property manager, or going into their office and immediately asking for their boss's info, not even asking for their name, asking to get to know them, going in and saying, how do I get a hold of your boss, or how do I get a hold of your regional? That again disrespects their authority. They are hired to be on site to oversee that property, and everything does start with them. So if you start going into their office and immediately trying to go around them instead of trying to, build that relationship with them first, that deal will be dead on arrival before you even start talking about numbers.
Awesome.
And it brings up a
Brian,
great
I'm
point
sorry.
in that we only get a first chance to make a one
Mm,
chance to make a first impression, right? And
right.
for us sales professionals, you have to make a choice because, I can show up under Ruth's office with dirty jeans and dirty boots and my hat on backwards because it's a dirty job, right? We're getting on roofs and climbing ladders and inspecting stuff. In all likelihood, she's going to peg me, categorize me as a commodity pain in the ass contractor who's probably going to need too much follow up. Versus, I tell people sport coat and a pair of clean shoes in your car,
Right.
when you've got a meetings, and you want to be their trusted advisor, their go-to expert, and their partner. And we need to make that impression when we show up. All right. I'm not a commodity. We're peers. I'm not subservient. I'm the expert. That's why you called me, and I'm here to help you. But I want to look the part.
Awesome. Bryan, I think this one probably applies mostly to you. How do you convert reactive leak calls into quoted scopes without the customer feeling sold to?
Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier as well, is if I can be with those techs when they go do the first repair, that has always got me in the door. Um, then I need to explain to this person that I'm not there to sell them. I'm there to educate them, and not only educate them in the roofing industry, but educate them on their roof. And so, one of the most important things in that proposal that Pat showed you is that you do prioritize the problems.
Mhm.
If I say this is urgent, I mean next time it rains, the water's either going to go into the roof system or through the deck into the building. And then I'll need to explain to my client what that means when water goes into the roof system, because if you don't see it inside, you think we're okay. But it's actually a hidden cancer that's up there because now it's starting to saturate the insulation, or it's starting to ruin the adhesion of the insulation to the concrete deck, or it's starting to rust a metal deck. So I think we go back to that education component. And quite frankly, the reason we prioritize the issues on a quote is because we don't want all the work. We want what the client needs.
Awesome. Great. That's what I had here, guys. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to reach out. And
Yeah.
otherwise, yeah,
I just want
thanks
to
for
throw in
joining.
there to wrap up. I learned something from Ruth today, and I was asking her about speaking on behalf of all of our sales professionals. How do I get an audience with Ruth? And she had some great ideas, and one of them, which for some reason never crossed my mind, was she's always open to bring lunch and do a lunch and learn, but bringing lunch to the facilities crew, or excuse me, bringing breakfast to facilities crew. You can see Ruth waving her head. Sounds like it will get you a lot of favors and get your foot in the door for sure. But not, and for some reason, it never dawned on me to feed the facilities team. But she's saying that's absolutely the winner.
Excellent. Well, Ruth, thank you so much once again. You are the consummate professional. We love having you on. We'll be on again together. Pat, awesome job, and thanks for sticking around, guys. We went way over time, and I apologize for that, but we're really pleased that you found it valuable enough to stick around. So we will let you know when the next one is on. Cheers. See you.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate
Did
it.
we capture the chats, by the way?
I think Nick's got it under control. Yeah.
Okay. Greg, we'll get back to you on all your points and questions. Thank you. Yeah. All right, guys. It was great seeing you. Sorry. Hopefully